So, I work as a psychotherapist, and I wanted to talk about two things that have been coming up a lot for me personally, and also for people that I talk to in their lives. I seem to be coming across a similar question and a similar obstacle with a lot of people that I talk to. The first question is what it is that we want in this life. And it's sort of amazing to me how when I ask just this simple question to my friends or my clients or whoever, or myself, what is it that you want out of this life? And if you just take a second or a few moments now and see if you have an answer to this question, I'll give you a little bit of time to think. What is it that you want? And maybe you have an answer, and that's good for you. But I think a lot of people have difficulty with this question because it's not something that we stop and think about all the time. I feel like life can get we can be on autopilot in our lives and just be going through the motions. It's like I get up because that's what I do. I go to work because that's what I do. I do this on Thursday nights. I do this on Saturday mornings. It's just like we're in a routine and we're just doing. We're just going forward. And I think that's where the mindfulness comes in. The mindfulness, I think, creates this space where we can sort of take a step away from this routine or from what is going on in our lives and see what is happening almost from like this third person perspective, and to be able to ask the question, what is it that I want in this life? And to realize maybe that there's not a clear-cut answer. It takes a certain level of mindfulness or self-awareness or insight into the self. It's a question that I've been thinking about a lot over the past decade. And for a long time, I couldn't really come up with an answer. Couldn't really come up with an answer of what it is that I want. And I think there are a lot of answers, but one of the ones that has been resonating with me the most lately is I want freedom. And what I mean by that is I want to be able to live a life that aligns with me, with who I really am, with where I can live and express myself in the truest form of what it means to be me. And when I am, well, if for those of you who have listened to other episodes of the podcast or just know a little bit about me, I used to work as an accountant, and I was working in a corporate environment, so there was, always something I had to be doing, and I happened to not really like the work that much, so I felt very restricted and very closed in and locked in. And I'm not saying go out and quit your job, because what I'm doing now, I own my own business and I also work as a psychotherapist, and it has been much more fulfilling to me, but it hasn't been easy. I mean, it's been a difficult road for me as far as like the hours that I have to put in when I'm not at work to grow my business and to be able to reach more people with these messages that I'm talking about. But it can be helpful to stop and think about what it is that you want. Because for me, I know that that answer is freedom. And that means doing what is aligned with my truest self and being able to be in the position to do that. To be able to, I guess, in the context of my business, it's being my own boss. But in the context of my life, it's like one of the things I wanted to do was start a podcast. So with the time where I'm not at my job, I'm doing the podcast. And that brings me to my other point that I started with. It's how do I find the time to do these things, to get what it is that I want in my life? And I think this is where it really comes to a place where we have to be really honest with ourselves and really deeply put ourselves under the microscope and explore our day from when we wake up to when we fall asleep and look at how we're spending our time. Because we only get so many hours, minutes, days on this earth. And sometimes we sort of spend it in a wasteful way. Maybe the only thing I can think of right now is just like scrolling through social media and looking at other people's lives and maybe comparing, and then falling into this pattern of feeling bad about your own life because you're not doing what they're doing. So now it's like, I don't know what I want, but they seem to know what they want, and they seem to be doing it, and I'm spending my time comparing myself to them. But it really is a matter of sort of a two-step process, I think. One is stopping and looking at, what is it that I really want out of this life, and being specific with that. And it's not a question that's going to be easily answered. I've been exploring it for a decade, and it changes all the time. I'm sure if I recorded a podcast about what I want a year from now, it'll be different. So also being open to the fact that it is changing. But what is it that you want right now? Maybe take time after this podcast is over, to start writing down and reflecting. And even write at the top of the page, what is it that I want? And then answering that question. And if you find you have writer's block, just pushing through it. Don't let the pen stop. Because there are answers in you, or at least I found that that's true for me, that there are answers in there. I found this answer, freedom. I want to be able to do things on my own terms and be the truest form of myself. And for me, that means doing this podcast, starting my own business, and being a psychotherapist and helping people, but having this creative process that happens in the psychotherapy where I can be free as well. This idea, it all came to me. I was walking on a beach one day, and I was going for a long walk, and there was a lot of space and clarity in that walk. I was away from everything, all my obligations, my responsibilities, and the answer came to me more easily in that space. So it kind of goes with what I was saying before about the mindfulness. It's like, really, I think it's just space. If we give ourselves space, maybe that's taking a step away from everything, or space in the form of like sitting in the morning in a formal practice, to have space for these answers to come up, because I believe that these answers are within us. And another form of doing that might be writing, like writing the question, what is it that I want? And answering that without letting the pen stop for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And then once you come up with an answer for what it is that you want, the next step is starting to go ahead and do that and coming up with specific steps that it takes. So like for me, I want this podcast to reach a lot of people because I want to share these thoughts that I'm sharing with you. And I want to talk about mindfulness, and I want to start a community where people can grow together and wonder together and have thought-provoking conversations, because that's always been really important to me. So that was my idea. I wanted to start a podcast. And then what it takes is looking at my day and considering, do I have the time to do this? So right now I'm literally standing in a closet in my house, and I just finished my work day, and I have an exam that I have to be studying for later, but I have this 10, 15 minutes in between, and I'm going to record this podcast because it's like, this is what I want. I want to share this message. I want to connect people on these important psychological conversations and thought-provoking conversations. So if it's what I want, then I'll find the time. And if you're wondering why I'm standing in a closet, it's because I read somewhere that if you're in a room with a lot of pillows or blankets or clothes, that it's better for the acoustics. Okay, so that's my thought for today. I wanted to share that with you. It's really a two-step process of considering what it is you want, being specific with it, giving yourself space to think about it, and even time to write about it, and then considering what steps you might take to go about doing that, and then really looking at your day under a microscope and go minute by minute or hour by hour and see, like, maybe there is time that maybe there's something that you're doing that is wasting time. Maybe you've been binge watching Netflix or doing something else, and you can use that time otherwise. These messages are influenced by some talks that I've heard by Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and Gary Vaynerchuk and Dean Graziosi, all these people. I forget how to pronounce his name. Herchovich, I think, the guy from Shark Tank. I just read a book by him recently. And a lot of these people point to this same image, and that is, the same concept, and that is, one is figuring out what you want and being specific about it, and also finding the time, or recognizing that there is the time in your day if you look at it under a microscope. And if there isn't the time in your day, then it's maybe making some adjustments in your life to have the time. And then there's also the mindfulness piece, like the awareness to recognize all of this is happening, as opposed to just continuing your life on autopilot and just going to work because it's what you're supposed to do, or doing whatever you do on Saturdays, every Saturday because it's in your routine. It's like stopping and looking at your life and like, what is happening in my life? What do I want out of this life? How am I going to go about moving towards that goal? And for me, what's been very helpful in having the insight to have all these conversations with myself and move in this direction is the space that I give myself in my meditation practice, and also asking myself these important questions and writing about it and reflecting and really just a continual process of learning about myself. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you soon.